everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Vegan Stew. I am Helene, and we have not been on for a little bit. I mean, Kelly and I went live to talk about Canada and the United States and all the things that are wrong, at least on our end. And the whole crew hasn't been together in, I don't even know. Maybe this year, maybe last year. I can't remember. But either way, thank you to Foods Alive for sponsoring our lives this month and our newsletter, which you can get to by going to vegfestexpos.com and finding all the details about what I do. And of course, streaming on the bottom, ticking on the bottom, is information about pretty much all of us. We have a special guest tonight, and that is Callie, who's the Veggie VA and the Knoxville Sage. And we also are going to have a very important topic. And that topic is mental health to close out Mental Health Month. And we're going to catch up, and you just also never know what we're going to talk about. If you can ask questions, have any comments, put that information in the little box, and we love to have you be part of the show. This one might be a little heavier than usual. So, again, subscribe to VegFest Expos and all our social media that you can. It would be great to follow us. We really appreciate the support. And I'm going to bring in the rest of the crew. Let's see. We've got Ellen Jaffe Jones. We've got Kelly Kerr. And we have Callie, who I just spoke about. All right. Well, let's start light. Let's start light. Well, one with, Callie, tell us about you, because nobody knows you except for me.
I am the Veggie VA, or virtual assistant extraordinaire. I also run a local newsletter, the Knoxville Sage, for mystical events and happenings around the Knoxville area. And I am recently diagnosed with ADHD, bipolar disorder, and anxiety and depression. So this is a very important topic for me.
And Ellen, what have you been up to?
Running Still Like a Wild Woman place this past weekend in 2 different races, 5Ks, 331st time doing that, all because somebody came up to me at a race in 2006 or 2011 when my first book, Eat Vegan on $4 a Day, came out and said, "Oh, you can't run on a vegan diet." I'm going like, wait, what? So it became this passion just to show to the world, and my 3 daughters, who were brought up being taught that I was in a cult, that this can be done. And at 72, I'm now getting a lot of, and I'm developing a program to kind of help people improve their quality of life, get off the couch in their senior years. And the whole longevity is a great buzzword right now. So I'm working with some folks on going in that direction.
Awesome. And Kelly?
What have I been up to? Well, I'm at the point in my life where it's a very transitionary period, career-wise, health-wise, mental and physical. So, I'm just trying to let it just play out, and see where it goes, and just like be okay with it.
Okay, that sounds good. I actually think I'm going to change our background. Yep. Well, it still has like this box around. Maybe it's on my end. Maybe I just have a shadow. But are we okay with that background? Well, it goes. Okay. So what have I been up to? Let's see. A ton of pickleball. And that's no joke. 6-7 days a week. I don't know. Last week I did 10, 11 days in a row. I guess I'm as obsessed with pickleball as Ellen is with running, and I'm having an absolute blast. I didn't understand when it was brought up years ago by what's her face. I can't remember her name right now. She lives in Arizona, and she was like, pickleball. And I was like, what is this pickleball? It's addictive. And it's probably the best exercise that I've ever done because you don't really feel like you're exercising. You feel like you are having a good time, normally with like non-dicky people, and you get a ton of exercise without feeling like you are. Then who doesn't want to exercise and not feel like you're exercising and burning somewhere between 600 and 1,000 calories every time we play? Who wouldn't want that? Raise your hand. I totally want that. So that, and part of the reason that this whole topic is happening this month is how do you even say this? So my whole public life of my relationship with Steven, we came on here in February of 24 and we had a whole conversation about cheating. And it was not the easiest of conversations. So let's fast forward to May of 2025 and Steven has committed suicide. And that in itself is a heavy topic. And it happens during Mental Health Month. And Callie and I were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago. And Callie had some amazing insights into my conversation about Steven's death. And we went, let's go live. Let's talk about this because I hesitated. Oh, hey, there's Afton. Hey. And I hesitated to write about it in my newsletter. And I decided the night before the newsletter that I would write about it because if it could help just one person or help a person who has somebody in their lives that is threatening suicide, thinking about suicide, having tried to commit suicide, then I feel some sort of, I don't want to say obligation, but I feel that it's super important that if I can help one person by writing about what's happened, then I'm going to write about it. And if you read the newsletter and reflect on that, or something happens, or you are feeling a certain way, then reach out to get help. Because if you don't, you reach out, there is somebody, and it might be from the most strangest source that you ever thought of. It doesn't necessarily have to be your closest friend, your husband, your wife, your best. It doesn't have to be that. It could be anybody who just has an ounce of compassion and understanding. It could be a suicide hotline. But reach out because you know what is very final? Death. It's super duper final. And especially when you're not in your right mind. I don't know. Callie, I'm going to throw it to you because I want you to share like part of what our conversation was, if you can recall, and I'll gather my thoughts.
Well, some of, I think, what we were discussing was how, even though it seemed like a surprise, there were signs or could have been signs that some people, like obviously being new into it myself, like it's easier for me to pick up things that I'm like, oh, that sounds like it could have been. But like there were instances that you told me about throughout the years where it seemed like he was like, he wasn't in his right mind at most of the time, it seemed like, as far as like not necessarily suicidal, but like having mental health battles, either with, anxiety or depression, or even, the feeling of bipolar disorder and needing to like reinvent himself sometimes for the dopamine, or that he was a terrible worker, I guess I've heard, and feeling like that it wasn't necessarily the case, but like he had sometimes a rough childhood, it sounds like. So when he came, he just came to be known as the horrible worker or the lazy friend. And so he let those titles speak for him instead of asking for help or searching for the help that it sounds like was more of a mental health issue than it was just the title of you're lazy or, things like that.
Yeah, basically I said, well, he was just being who he was. And that's when Callie responded with, well, maybe it wasn't who he was. It was who everyone thought he was, who thought what he was supposed to be. And that never gave him the opportunity to actually find or be him, because no one around him actually thought there was anything wrong outside of him just being who he was. And he may have never had the opportunity to actually be who he wanted to, who he could have been, I guess, because none of us actually probably even understood that that was even the case. And I think that makes it opened my eyes big time when Kelly and I had this conversation, because I wasn't with someone I felt was depressed. I feel like things happened after the relationship ended, which I've learned since he passed. And he also has a dad that is very similar. So a lot of people are just like, well, he's just like his dad, and it's really hard, because if there weren't a parent that had these similar traits, then there might have been a more expedient interest in helping, to say like, hey, maybe it's not a good idea that you just pick up and leave. Maybe it's not a good idea that you have whirlwind relationships. Hey, maybe it's not a good idea that, when you leave, you literally leave like when the person's not there, and you leave a note. Like thing that's not what happened to me, but it's what's happened to many others. And I just happened to be a person that he came back to over and over. So, I mean, I think that's it's obviously it's extremely heavy. And like right before we went live, I learned that the funeral will probably be in August. So there's a little bit more time. There's a little more time to like mull this over and write a eulogy and create a video collage and all of that. And it's this topic is super interesting, because I know that most of the people out there have some sort of mental health type something. There's more people on medication than not on medication, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel there's, and let's like talk about the vegan thing for a second. Like medication, being vegan is doing the best that you can. And one of the best ways you can for yourself and those who love you and to live on this planet in this very difficult life that we are all living is to do what's best for your own mental sanity and health. And that might be medication. No, the medication itself is not vegan. However, that's not the point of veganism. There's people on this call who couldn't be on this call without medication. I think that's like super important to understand. They couldn't live their lives in a functioning manner. And the fact that they figured that out is a very big deal for them and for the people that love them. So I don't want to take away that stigma. I don't want anyone commenting, well, the medicine's not vegan, because I mean, Marla is down in the green room. She doesn't want to be on camera, but I mean, come on. But, she dealt with a lot of that when her husband was diagnosed with leukemia. I mean, Marla, if you want to jump in and talk about that.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize I could add myself. I was just sitting there waiting. I apologize. Yeah, no, I'm also sorry for being late. I thought it was 7 p.m. my time. Speaking of mental health, right? We're all doing our best, or we're not. But oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm on a call. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in life that are not vegan, right? That we still have to do because that's our option, driving a car, or this or that glue that's in this or that thing, or whatever, but veganism has never been about absolutism. To me, at least, it's about doing our best in our circumstances, in our world, a very
Right, exactly.
world,
It's doing the best you can. And if anyone hasn't noticed, we don't live in a vegan world.
We don't?
We
That's
don't.
so weird.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
That's all we can do. We actually don't live amongst a whole bunch of vegans, and we definitely don't want to be the pretentious, judgy, in your
Right. face
people, because gosh, I hate those people. So mental health or not, I'm not a fan. So if you have your abilities, don't do that. But
Well, see, and
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking, like, because I had the battle at first that, medicines aren't vegan, but like, there are ways you can kind of reduce that, like, if you, the meds, if you're going to be on them, maybe look at if they're, vegan gelatin or veg gelatin versus animal gelatin, and see if there is a non capsule version, is one thing that I did with a couple of mine. And it's just, just peace of mind sort of things. It's not necessary, but if it was something you wanted to look into. And then a lot of the meds that are old meds aren't necessarily tested anymore. Like, old things like Prozac or some of those aren't tested on animals anymore, which we know isn't the point, but it still, gives you that peace of mind that they're not being, they've got their formula down pretty much. They don't have to worry about it. So you can rest assured kind of that it's off the plate now. But my thinking is also that for me to do what I do as a vegan, as a vegan assistant to vegan entrepreneurs, as part of my activism, I have to be in the best mental state that I can be to be able to help more animals, to help more businesses help animals. So all of those things that are my passion are only happening now because I finally got medicated. Otherwise, I was just surviving.
Right. I mean, what good is it for anyone, including the animals, if you are incapacitated?
Yeah.
Nothing.
And I think it's incredibly uncompassionate for a vegan to tell you to not go on medication simply because of this purity thing,
right?
And I know there's lots of conversations nowadays about vegans and their levels of compassion to everything that's going on in the world. But I think for me personally, I reconciled, my veganism to medications that I've taken like a long time ago. For me, I think the thing that gets my back up the most is the vegans who proclaim that all you need to do is do a diet switch and it will cure your depression. Like, you know what I mean? Like your depression is just a diet thing. And, and that's not to say the diet cannot help. Of course, diet can help. I'm absolutely not saying that, but that it's just, that it's just that. It has like that. I found like the hardest to reconcile.
Someone who would say something as simplistic as that is someone who hasn't been through the same situation.
Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of like, when we talk about it all the time with veganism and like meeting people where they are. So it is important that we recognize not everybody's experience is the same. Obviously, not everybody's lifestyle is the same. So like, maybe diet worked for that person, who maybe had a mild case, or it was a lifestyle case and not a brain malfunction, I guess, or, so it's like, it's completely, stereotyping people or just lumping everyone together that this can solve it and that can solve it, and taking out the individuality of each person and what their life is and what they're suffering with.
Ellen?
Thank you.
She's been trying to get in.
I know, poor Ellen is like
all these Zoom meetings where you raise your hand, 10 people lined up with hand raising. Anyway,
that doesn't work here.
I put a little humor in this very heavy subject, which it is near and dear. My fiance in Miami, the short story is same thing. I mean, the alternative here is what we're talking about is death. I mean, that is the living elephant in the room. Because what happened to him was I knew something wasn't quite right. My parents really wanted me to marry this nice Jewish lawyer. And he was amazing in so many ways and like me in so many ways. We were very compatible, except he just had this edge and he got really angry sometimes and was never physical with me, but he would black out and not remember the fit of anger. And that happened one too many times and I was out of there. So that was when I was 26. And when I was doing the research for my 5th book, Vegan Sex, I was going, well, whatever happened to Steve Cantor? And I Googled him, and 4 years prior, and I'd followed him a little bit over the years. I knew he became one of the most successful tax attorneys in the world, setting up all these Netherlands, Antilles tax shelters. And anyway, he had his own law firm, and 4 years prior, he had jumped off the top of a building on Brickell in Miami to his death. And I connected with his sister who lives in the Tampa area, and she said, you know, he was diagnosed with bipolar, and I suspect, even though she hadn't been in touch with his current wife, that he wasn't on his meds. So I say that's the alternative. And same thing with my ex-husband, also Jewish, and I wrote that in the side chat that, you know, my OB then told me when I was finding these notes that he left around, and that depression and suicide can be pretty common and relative to the rest of the population in the Jewish population. So trying to fix it, yeah, you know, it's just with anything. I mean, yeah, exercise is good, endorphins. Everybody always says we hate running, and then afterwards we love it. It becomes an addiction because of the feel-good endorphins and all that. So, but trying to say, you know, and I when I've talked to Helene, you know, we had this conversation about, you know, it has haunted me ever since I found out about that. Was there anything I could have done?
Right.
And you just can't beat yourself up too badly about it. It's a pretty normal reaction and feeling, I think, to have, and it still haunts me to this day. And after I found out, you know, it was a long time before I didn't think about it every single day.
Just so you know, Ellen, your comments are going in our private chat, not the public one. So if you want them to be public, move over to the comments.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll be all good. There's a lot of truth to what Ellen was saying, and I do walk around my house at times saying, why, Stephen, why?
Yeah.
You know, because it's something with suicide is you won't know the actual answer of why. In this case, he didn't even do this in this country. He did it in another country, and he also jumped off a cliff, and you know, there's some I can surmise, right? I can say that, you know, because he cheated with my best friend at the time, and we have spoken.
Was she there with him?
No.
Okay.
No. He did the leave and leave a note thing twice. So, but, you know, I did share that I'm glad this isn't my burden.
Yeah.
That it wasn't on my clock. It doesn't make it easier, but it also, instead of having the feelings of it personally happening to me, I have the feelings of what she's feeling.
Right.
Because I can understand how hard this is for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's pretty new. I mean, it's 3 weeks ago on Friday. So.
And you were together for a while. It wasn't just like a month or two.
Oh no! This is somebody that I knew for at that point almost 40 years.
Yeah. So for quite a few of the years you were, you know, just friends, and then for other times you were a couple.
Yep.
So that's a long history there, and a lot that you can be unpacking and obsessing over and looking for signs. And I mean, like, I'm not an expert in this, but I do feel like a lot of times it is just that moment of the dark night of the soul where you just, you know what I'm saying? Not that there aren't moments that lead up to it, but it could have just been so overwhelming in that moment, you know?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it has to be. I mean, he jumped off a cliff.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't smooth, it was jagged.
Oh,
And yeah, so I mean, he's a science guy, right? He was a science guy.
mhm.
And hi, Jennifer. And I kind of, for me, I'm the person I know probably looked up on his computer how high he needed to be
Right.
in order to make sure that he didn't survive, because
Mhm.
that was, you know, it wasn't an option,
Right.
you know, when he made this decision. And another Jennifer, hi, another Jennifer.
Mhm.
And it wasn't something that he was definitely not looking to be paralyzed or needed to be taken care of, because it just wasn't. No.
Yeah.
That was, you know, that's part of my thinking, right? Is like, well, did
Mhm.
he, you know, was there something wrong? Did he have cancer? Did he have like long COVID or neurological issues?
Right. Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of things. How drunk was he when he jumped? I'm hoping like super drunk, super plastered,
Mhm.
so that, you know, it didn't hurt as much.
Yeah. Did he give an indication that this was premeditated then, going all that way? And okay. Uh-huh.
Well, it's because like I've learned that he tried previously
Yeah. Yeah.
and didn't go through with it because he passed out drunk.
Right. Mm.
Right? So these are things I've learned. That was in the fall. And then
Mhm.
he came back and then he left again. So, like I said, I think there's only so many things I want to say publicly, because obviously I have my own thoughts and feelings on how I
Mhm.
would have handled things.
Mhm.
And I think all of you know how I would have handled things. So, but at the same time, he was a human being that
Yeah.
made his choices, his decisions,
Mhm.
and one of those was to not be with us anymore after
Mhm.
56 years.
Mhm.
And you know, the people left behind have
Mhm.
to deal with it,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's
Mhm.
all they can do.
Mhm.
And that in itself is a mental health issue. I mean,
Mhm.
because your mind does race.
Mhm. Yeah, I haven't known that many people who have died by suicide, but there was one young man when I was also around the same age in my 20s, who I knew briefly, and you know, he was obviously troubled, but very nice, very kind, very funny, very creative and kooky. And I only knew him for a couple of months. He would show up where I worked and, like, flirt with me. It was very funny. But in that few months, 2 or 3 months that I knew him, that was enough fodder that I still think about him and kind of regret some of the ways that I was unkind because he was annoying, you know, and wish that I had been, you know, more understanding and kind and generous and that sort of thing. So I can only imagine with a relationship and a friendship that spans as long as yours does, it's as long as a connection as like with some of your siblings almost, you know.
Yep.
That there's a lot of chances to ruminate and beat yourself up and regret. Because, like I said, I only knew this guy for a few months and I find myself still thinking about him, you know. So I just, I do hope that you're offering yourself as much grace and, kindness as possible.
I don't think the I don't know if it has anything to do with the amount of time. I feel like if you even hear of a celebrity committing suicide, you hear of anybody doing something like this, whether you knew them or not, I feel there's a piece of all of us that is just heartbroken that somebody felt so hurt that that's the choice that they felt they had to make.
Or
Because-
maybe, sorry.
Good.
Maybe they felt so tired. Maybe they felt so done with it.
Yep.
Maybe they felt so ready to move on. You
Correct.
know what I'm saying? And so it is possible in our framing that we can also just not, like, maybe that was the last empowered choice that they made. I don't think that suicide is the worst thing in the world. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but I do think suffering is far worse, and not that I'm encouraging anyone to die by suicide, but I am just saying,
Well, let's do a little clarification there. There's a very big difference between suffering from something that, like, bipolar people who are bipolar have a tendency to commit suicide because the meds are so erratic. It's hard to, they can easily go off. And then somebody who is on medication for anything that's super serious, they feel great and they think they can be okay without the meds.
Yes.
Right? Because so they take themselves off of it. And for like a few weeks they are, because the meds are still in their system. And then things go haywire and they don't have the ability to go back because they don't understand why all that is happening, because they're not okay. I think there's a very big difference. But like someone who's terminally ill is very different from somebody who has a mental health issue where they could potentially have help or get help and they don't know. But you can't necessarily make them know, but you can lead a path and see if they take the drink.
Right.
Right.
I just think that, like, with the broad brush of someone with, who's mentally ill, they're all different as well, right? So there could be people who have a much milder form or have much more support at home or whatever it is, So I think at the end of the day, all we can do is extend compassion and realize that we can not fully know what's going on within someone, and to remember, like, this is like one of the most important things I learned as a child when my grandfather had dementia. As a neighbor told me, you have to think of it like it's physiological, because it is. And mental illness is the same way. It's like we give everyone grace when not everyone does this, but we tend to extend compassion when someone has a physiological illness or disease. But we think it's quote unquote all in your head if it's, emotional or psychological, mental. And we have to, I would rather have a sprained ankle any day over anxiety. I would rather have many other things over anxiety. Yet here I am with anxiety. It's just.
And you made the choice to go on meds.
Yes, and I'm off them now, though my husband, and I have been for like 6 months. My husband knows, like, if I start getting weird, but like it seemed like most things were kind of. I'm not one of those people who's on and off and on and off. I had just started them a few years ago, and they helped me through a really rough patch. And I totally give my so much gratitude to them. But then it started kind of not working for me as well, and I you know, I didn't want to necessarily go through life as a robot. Personally, sorry, that sounds judgmental, but that's kind of how I weighed it out, you know. So
Yeah, that happened with me too. I wasn't diagnosed as having major depressive until after, when my father told us that he had cancer. And there was just so much happening at that time. I had lost a job that I was at for almost a decade. That was like everything to me. Finding out my father had cancer, and I couldn't cope. And you know, and seeing his decline, and so I was put on medication. Well, I went to a psychiatrist, and she is the one who told me, like, I was like adamant, I do not want to go on medication. Don't, you know, I, you know, just was one of those people. And she just basically said, I don't know. I think we're kind of reached the end right now of how I can help you, because I really think you need to be on medication and in order to, you know, like allow yourself to kind of continue, you know, with that help. And I didn't know anything about them. I trusted my doctor, and she put me on Lexapro, and I was the same, Marla. Like, you know, yeah, I was like, I felt nothing.
Yeah,
you know, but at least I was functioning.
Yes,
whatever functioning means. Right. You know, but I wasn't experiencing, like, I had no emotions, and I wasn't experiencing like my dad's decline, and especially as it got like worse in the last, you know, like 6 months or so, but I caught myself and realized, like, why can't I cry over this? Like, my father's dying, right? You know, and I realized I needed to go off that medication. That was not the right medication for me. I had a really bad withdrawal, and I probably didn't do it properly because I, you know, didn't take myself off it.
In weaning.
I just, like, you know, kind of, I didn't like cut cold turkey, but like, you know, like I didn't reduce it and take that, you know, so I had the brain zaps and everything. And, you know, and then he passed, and, you know, I probably should have just went on another dose, and I didn't. And then when after he passed, I don't remember how long after, I was like, I need to go back on it. And then I went on Motrin, and that did actually had no effect on me. And
I don't mean to laugh. It's just like, so. Wow.
Yes. And I went off it, but like, I'm realizing I need to be on it now. And I've been assigned one, but I'm so afraid to go on it now. I'm afraid of like the process. And that's something that, like, I think people who have not experienced depression or anxiety should know. And it's something I'm very vocal about to, like, my family, is like the experience of trying medications and what it does to you, right? It's really traumatizing. Like the brain zaps, like, you know, I felt like I was, you know, like I hated that. It was horrible. It was horrible to have your mind constantly zapping, you know. It was almost as bad as depression, you know. So like,
I need you to explain that. What is brain zapping?
It's
seem
like,
or feel like?
It's just like, it's the fluctuation of the serotonin levels kind of creates these, like, it literally feels like your brain is being zapped. That's the only way I can, like, it's like you could like I could hear it too, like a static noise, right? And, you know, and so I guess that's the only way I can describe it. And that's just what happens when
your body's
on it, and then when you're going off it. It wasn't happening when I was on it. It was the ramp up, like it was me getting used to it, and then me getting off it. But it was traumatizing enough that it has scared me off of medication, even though I know I need to be on it. So I think like that's something that, you know, the people who haven't suffered, like, don't know about. You know, we did, like, you know, there's this whole other, you know, thing that we're not just like dealing with depression. We're trying to find the right way to deal with it effectively. And sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. You find the perfect medication.
Right. It's like Goldilocks, right? You're like, this one's too hot, this one's too cold, this one's just right. But like you're putting your whole body through that experience. And a lot of times people don't have weeks on end to see if something's working and then to get themselves off of it and to try something new. Like I am fairly, very lucky in that, I'm working from home. So if I'm being weird, I can like kind of keep it to myself here. But one of the things that was strangest to me about anti-anxiety medication, because I'm like a crier. I'm like the person, my mom was the same way. I cry at the drop of a hat. I see somebody crying. I don't know what they're crying over. I start sympathy crying. And I had like someone who easily cries. And I think a lot, like it's always been something that bothered me because I know to people who are not really sensitive and cry easily, it looks like manipulation. It's like if I could hold that inside me in those moments when I'm being really vulnerable and crying and I don't want to, I would. But the thing that was strangest to me about the anti-anxiety thing was I would just be observing things, like whether it was a situation or a movie or a song, and it was like, oh, that's sad. It was just like, it was intellectual, it was like, oh, this is a sad thing I'm observing. Oh, this is bittersweet. And it was almost like Margaret Mead or something standing on the outside looking in and observing. And for myself, I'm a writer, so I need my emotions, so it's like a tricky thing, but and so I totally hear you, Kelly. We have a friend on Facebook who's been very open about the trauma of getting off of a very intense anti-anxiety medication that was poorly prescribed to him, and how that almost led to a very terrible outcome for him. So it is very serious stuff. So Jennifer in the comments wrote about gene site testing. Does anyone know anything about that? Gene site testing?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't either. I'm guessing it like specifically looks at what your genetics are telling you need.
But if Jennifer, if you want to share more in the comments, it'll be on the screen so you can help us out. We'd really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Also, when Kelly was talking, she posted survival mode. Right, because I mean that's I guess where you're at. And see, it's hard for me because I don't have what you have, right? So I go in my head and I self-shrink myself and I come to conclusions and thoughts about what's going on, what's realistic, what my piece of it is, what part I could or could not have played, and how other people feel, how other people will have to manage what they're doing. And I run through all of that because I'm an empath. So Jennifer said it's a mouth swab that shows what medications work best with your body.
Interesting.
Well, I think that would be a great thing. Thank you for sharing that. That's a big deal. And
right.
Hopefully insurance covers it.
Right. Just kidding.
So. Well, Kelly probably have an easier time in Canada. No.
Can I crash on your couch for like a month or like a few years? Almost 4 years. Would that be okay?
I've been invited already, so I think I might have dibs.
Come on.
So.
I get the couch for like.
I won't turn sleepover yet.
We'll just give you the list, Helene. Like, we need these medications. We need these to assist. And you just bring them back. I'm lucky enough that I have both this Jennifer Sheridan and this other Jennifer and Afton Hughes as part of my support group. They have helped me, stay alive on top of the cats and my husband. But there have been times where I've wanted to drive into a tree, or just to not be dealing with whatever it was I was dealing with. And obviously I know that that's a quick fix. And there have been times where my brother committed suicide in 2023.
Sorry.
Thanksgiving Day-ish, possibly early morning the day after, but that was and that was when I noticed, or that's when I realized that I needed the help that I have, because it wasn't I was never getting better. I tried the exercise, I tried to cut out the caffeine, I tried to do the yoga, and none of that ever felt like it would, maybe for a little while, but nothing was ever actually working. So, but then when I saw what it did to my mom, and obviously my first thought was, I don't ever want my mom to feel that way again, if I can help it. And so that was when I started talking to someone and started getting medication. And it's made a world of difference for me, as far as being able to function, being able to talk. My girls actually even say that I'm less of a bitch than I used to be. I'm still negotiating whether that's a good thing or a bad thing on my part, because it was always a high level label that I liked. But it does help me recognize things now too, like the ADHD that I suffer from as well. Like some of the things that I do, or that I'm like, oh, well, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. We're not, people with ADHD are actually bad at self-reflection. Like you were talking about, Helene, that you can do. And so we're not as good with that as normal neurotypical people. But then also, obviously, with my depression and my anxiety, I get stuck in a spiral, and that spiral can last for days. So it's harder to get out of it and self-reflect, especially if that self-reflection feels like it's going to hurt more than whatever I'm already dealing with. So it's been a lot, but I can say that I feel better than I have in a very, very long time.
Amazing.
And when I look back, I'm like, because I was the procrastinator, I was lazy, I was, I don't listen, I don't do this. And I'm realizing that all of those things are actually things that I was probably dealing with that went unnoticed because they already had a label on them. And that label wasn't that I had a mental disorder.
Well, what's also interesting in going to the blocks, and Dr. Kristen is one of the mentors, and her focus is on the brain as, psychoanalysis, psychologist type stuff, and psychotherapist. And one thing she said to me was that in the entrepreneurial realm of people, ADHD, neurodivergence is all extremely prevalent. In some level or manner, we all have it. And it was, and she was describing what that was like. And I was like, oh. It was like, you never thought of it as something that could be in my realm. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I have some of those things. And I guess that's, it's kind of what makes entrepreneurs be entrepreneurs and it also kind of makes us why we don't work for other people.
Right.
So because we suck at that. We just do. I mean, I'm kind of envious of people who work for other people in a way because they have consistency and less stressors. And
yeah, for sure. Being I'm not in the same realm as you, but I think there are it is adjacent to being a freelancer in the sense of there's a lack of consistency. You get the freedom of your time, that you get the freedom of your choice. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm so grateful to be able to, be able to steer my own ship. But sometimes that ship is, ready to hit an iceberg, and that's life.
Yeah.
So,
It makes it hard, and I'm not saying what I've figured out over the last few years, and that I didn't really feel up until the last few years, is that life is really hard. I mean, it never really had such a strong impact. It's not that I hadn't gone through things. My parents been gone for most of my life, and I've dealt with a whole bunch of shit like that, and like relationships and heart pain. I mean, heart in the sense of
right.
relationships and friendships and but it just hits differently now. Like I part of me understands. Part of me understands why he took his life. I get it. Life is hard. And it's not for the weary, and it's not you're more aware. We have political issues, which he was very aware of. I mean, the country we're living in is really not that pleasant. And if you have any type of mental health issue or depression or anxiety,
right,
that is just elevated.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's elevated in people who don't have to be on medication for anxiety and depression. So I
it's hard.
It's hard.
Because I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day who's dealing with her father is, probably pretty close to losing his independence, and they're trying to figure out where's he going to live. They're empty nesters, but their kids are coming back after college because the economy is all messed up, and her father is a hoarder, so they've got to deal and also untangling all of his finances and figuring out all of where he's at. But the thing is that life is hard enough, and then you can add to it this spiraling of a democracy in peril and absolutely crumbling beneath our feet. It's like one of the things you were saying, Helene, is that life being hard. I think, and this is maybe a trope or whatever, I think when we're younger, we have a little more resilience about challenges, speaking broadly, because we're not injured here and there. We don't have all these. It's like at the end of a race, is much harder probably than the beginning, where you have all the energy to jump over the obstacles and climb this and jump off that. And at the end, you've nicked this and you sprained that. And, so I do think it makes sense that as we get older, in some ways we have more wisdom, in many ways we have more wisdom, we have more connections, we have more ability to sort of articulate our emotional state, but we're also more injured, more tired, more feeling dread because we've been through similar experiences. You know what I'm saying? So
I do. I hear you. I mean, I completely relate. You have this idea of relationships post, the one that you had, and like none will compare, no matter how it ended. None will compare. And just working and jobs and society, and when you're younger, you're right. You could hit your arm on the wall and you can just keep going like it didn't happen. Now it's like the end of the fucking world. It's like, wow, that really hurt.
It hurts more.
It hurts. It's like our skin has thinned, and then there's the menopause thing. I'm playing pickleball and having hot flashes. I am dripping with sweat while I'm playing pickleball because I'm literally feeling a hot flash come on and then go, and I'm just like, this fucking sucks. This really is not fun. This just isn't fun. And then
sorry.
Good. No, you have to build new relationships and new friendships, and then you have to trust when you've been when you've had, somebody, rip your heart out and stomp on it, and then, have somebody take advantage of you, it's not easy. And I feel like I was doing very well. And then as I wrote my newsletter and I've said to friends, I feel like I have a box that I packed away and I put it into storage.
Yeah.
And that I didn't really think I was going to look in that box again. And now that box is thrown up all over my bed.
Right.
And it's all over my mind.
That is healing, though. It is really, it's not a straightforward trajectory. Not if you're going to really face the things that you're needing to really face in order to heal. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about like the whole experience with John, my husband, having leukemia. It's like I had to become a robot as much as possible because I just had to get him from point A to point B to evade COVID to keep him alive, and your metaphor of putting things in a box, I totally relate to, because I am, a pretty emotional person, but I had to have, like, if anything wasn't on my list, it wasn't going to get done. It's like every little moment is accounted for. And it was only after we were out of the worst of it that the emotions started, and then they really flooded in. So it's understandable if your box is kind of like it's popping open a little bit, and that's okay. That's what it's meant to do.
Well,
but it's flooding you.
Well, it's interesting because if he hadn't killed himself, the box would have stayed in storage. Right. So, and now all the things in the box look different from when they were put in. Right. So pictures which hurt now take on a different meaning. Now I see someone who's happy.
I'm sorry, you said now you see what? Someone
who's happy.
Yeah. And I'm sure it connects too beyond the relationship to other traumatizing moments, losses. I just find it interesting. You lost your parents at really such a relatively young age. And I don't mean this because everyone deals with things in their own way, but you've always seemed so kind of matter of fact about it. I mean, what else are you going to be? But to me, it seems like maybe I'm reading more into it than I am, but like that maybe you've just, made that as acceptable as you can by kind of removing the emotions. You know what I mean?
Well, when you're 18 and 21, you don't have a relationship.
What do you mean?
When you're so young, when people die.
Yeah.
And you didn't have like a great relationship during that short time that you had. It's a little easier to lose those people because.
But there's also the loss of what you didn't have. You know what I'm saying?
Like, there is, but I don't have that.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not what I don't have. That's not my reality.
Right.
So I just kind of like other people's parents. Because that's what you do, right? You appreciate other people's parents, and you try to say to people, make sure you have a relationship because they're not always going to be there. And wow, you are so fortunate. Like Ellen's kids are so fortunate that Ellen is in her 70s. And they still have her.
And one of them doesn't even speak to me, but we won't go there.
That must be new.
No.
I'll let you adopt me, Ellen.
By the way, Jennifer said when you have been traumatized and another trauma happens, old stressors and trauma emerges.
Yeah.
And in the sense of that's what happened, not for not like a whole flood of other things. It's just the flood of that actual relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand too that some of these severe traumas can wreak havoc on your body. I mean, there's
Yeah.
irritable bowel syndrome for starters. That's really because it's like a second brain in your colon.
Right.
And then when I had some heart issues a few years ago, they worked me through a bunch of things. And one of the things that they can actually find in the heart, on the heart, is scar tissue from heartbreak. I mean, who knew?
Literal heartbreak, right?
Yeah. From it actually shows up in scans now that they can do, which I think is really crazy, but it does.
That is super cool. I mean, I've dropped 30 pounds playing pickleball. I mean, I feel better. I feel I look better, and just annoyed with myself for gaining that weight in the first place after I lost all that weight over COVID. But what was playing out was something that I wasn't aware of. Jennifer said the body keeps the score. It sure does. And that's what it's like super important. And to touch back to veganism, it's super duper important to feel your body as healthy as you can, because we have all this other stuff that is pounding at us on a daily basis that we want to be as strong as possible when dealing with all those things. Right. And then you've got, I don't know, Dr. Montgomery. I didn't know Dr. Montgomery, but I did look at how old he was. And that's not much older than me. So I don't know what happened. I know Chef AJ said that he passed away with his family around him. But
his obit said heart failure or cardiac arrest. I think that was the term. But you never know what's going on with people and what they dealt with before, because they probably weren't born vegan, and what happened before. I know I have a high cardiac calcium score, the same as Dr. McDougall, and he had on his chest tattooed, or so we said, do not calf. And but he had a stroke very early in life as a result of his bad habits before the age of 18. So I saw that too, and I wonder, because he was a cardiologist, and people are always going to say, well, the vegan diet didn't cure that, did it? But we know what he had going into it. So.
It's really, really hard, because the assholes out there are going to say things about like Chef AJ having lung cancer, and Dr. McDougall and Dr. Montgomery, Baxter Montgomery, like passing away from things that they were actively fighting. And we have to help people understand that, veganism isn't a cure, it's a mitigating factor. And just because you're vegan doesn't mean that you're eating well. I mean, that's that doesn't necessarily mean that you're eating. No one on this call is a whole food plant-based vegan. I think we all dabble in it.
as we've established, that's not a magic bullet either.
Correct. So. I mean, it's just. Then Jennifer said, Jennifer, you're awesome. We should watch all the time. Those of us who have compassion for animals have usually suffered. That's why we feel for them and advocate for them, which is very true, which is why a lot of people in the activist community have mental health issues. Lo and behold.
Well, see, and I was going to say, when you're talking about how it sucks, like, it's hard. Life kind of sucks right now. And it goes, I was thinking of the fact that that's why mental health is so important, is because that gives you another step in helping it suck less, I guess, or to not suffer from the suck is kind of like, is kind of what it is. But also, like, it also goes back to veganism, and like, you can only do what you can do. And so, being as vegan as possible, being as practical as possible. The world's going to suck, but at least if you address your mental health, you're doing your part to make your world better. And that's why I think that it's so important that they tie in, obviously, together so much, especially for people in this lifestyle, that it's not a cure, but it's a step in doing the best you can do. When you
Right.
know better, you do better. And that's, you know, what taking into account your mental health and your diet both can do.
Mhm.
Yeah, Jennifer said harm reduction moment, what Kelly was saying. And then right before that, adverse early childhood experiences scores directly correlated with longevity and later life expectancy.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not too sure how I feel about that.
Believe it.
More
I
kale,
not
more
quite
kale.
believe it.
I mean, I don't know many people who didn't have an adverse childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, I just and it's what leads to how messed up people are as adults
Yeah.
and dealing with adults and dealing with kids, you know, having a bit more of an attitude than
Mm.
you think they should have. And and now living in a society where things that were not so commonplace to be so open and vocal about
Mhm.
is now accepted or standardized. And then things that we should be open and vocal about is on the edge of becoming illegal.
Mhm. What is on
Fun.
the edge of becoming illegal?
Speaking how we feel.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you know, closing access to mental health care, to affordable housing, to all, you know, it's like we don't want your quote unquote homeless, yet we're going to defund all of the agencies that help them, you know, it's like, yet we don't want to see them, yet all these, you know, it's like, God, what a cruel and callous administration, you know.
Well, and that's just like with the medication and how they were talking about how they're gonna, you know, stop the antidepressants or stop the ADHD
Yeah,
meds and
yeah.
stop this. And it's like, for one, you're just adding to the stigma.
Right. Yeah.
And for two, is like, obviously you're putting unnecessary harm and anxiety and depression on the people who are suffering from it,
Mhm.
who need those meds to function, on
Mhm.
top of what we're already dealing with the administration, with life in general. And it's just like, it's, yeah, like it's just a cruel process
Mhm.
of an ableist society
Yes,
and
absolutely.
hateful society.
Mhm.
Come on, Kelly. You know that they just want to do the survival of the fittest thing.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of like, you know, what better way to create the most amazing human race than to rid our country of the people that would make us not superpower?
Right. But like, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, I have my tubes tied, so if I take medication, it doesn't matter because I'm not adding to the procreation, right? Like that's. So
Well,
can I
and
get
it's
on a registry to
also
still
like,
get my meds?
these terrible people are going to try to convince us that they are the paragon of what is, that they are the ultimate of what is possible. Come on. You're not exactly motivating, you know. It's like they're so cut off and so cruel and so emotionally unintelligent, you know, and yet we're supposed to believe that they're like the best of the best. Okay, I don't think so.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And we, oh gosh, it's just, I said this to a few friends. I said, I wish I could bury my head in the sand
Mm,
and not be aware,
mm,
but I just can't.
mm.
Oh, and as Jennifer said, as if DT as well.
As if any of them are. They're so, I mean, it's just like they are one giant diagnoses waiting to it's like all of them. There's something so, like when a narcissist is out of control and they're all along those lines and they don't have any self-awareness, and it's like, oh my God, whoa.
No, I think they do have self-awareness. They are more than aware of what they're doing. That power is trumping, and pun intended, power is trumping everything else, because
It's Trump.
that's what they
But
that's the
self-awareness, I don't know if that's self-awareness. To me, self-awareness, you see yourself as part of a whole of others as well. I don't know. I'm naive, whatever.
No, I truly believe that well, I've watched it play out. It's been a chess game, and they are more than aware of what they are doing. They've been planning
I
it
know
for
they're
so
aware of
many
what they're
years,
doing. Yeah.
and now here they are making choices for money and power. And the funny thing is about money and power is that you think that you have it until you realize that somebody else is always going to be on top, and that somebody always has to be on the bottom.
Right.
And where do you rank in that? It's like Survivor.
Well,
Like
they'll never be happy. They'll never be content, because the fact is that, like, Trump can get everything he wants, and a lot of times he fucking does. I'm sorry, I'm swearing, but the thing that bothers him most is that Taylor Swift and Bruce Springsteen don't like him. The fact that bothers him to the point of, like, posting inanities in the middle of the night, because that bothers him so much. It just shows you how fragile someone like that truly is, despite what they try to project, you know? Yeah, there's something very wrong with him. Sorry.
No, I was going to say is that unfortunately leads us back to exactly where we started. And Stephen throwing himself off a cliff shows how fragile he was, even though I like I told you when we were having that conversation, like, I've known you for years and I didn't even see it. Like, so it's just like the fragility is there, but it's not always visible. Obviously, you know, the orange buffoon, his is visible, but it just goes back to that, you know, that it can still be there. It's still there, no matter how hard we may portray it.
Right.
And that not counting the current incumbent, people deserve grace, I guess, and like, and meeting them where they are, and understanding that, like we said before, is we don't all have the same lived experience. And we need to recognize that.
That's very true.
That's very true.
I also think. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, I was gonna say. I also think, like, you know, you always hear, like, if you read stories about, like, I think there needs to be more education, like, you know, like we're saying, like, the, you know, the people who suffer from anxiety and depression and bipolar and all that, you know, like they're just trying to get by. And so I don't think, like, it's not like, I think there needs to be more education for people to understand, you know, the signs, you know, because they're not always obvious. You know, and like, you know, it's like, we're like, it shouldn't be about, like, oh, let's erase the stigma of mental health, right? I mean, yes, obviously we need to erase that, but we also need to, like, make it so that, like, it's not a stigma. I'm trying to think about how to explain it. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, you always say, like, oh my gosh, like Robin Williams, you know, oh my gosh, such a funny guy, and, you know, and you know, like, you know, we've been talking about, like, just like trying to fit in, and, you know, and just make it, like, just be okay for us to just say it, and for, like, you know, and you know, and create that space, and so that, you know, you're not just looking for signs that, you know, we might not be giving off, you know, because I know, like, for me, if anyone meets me, I don't think anyone would know just how much I'm suffering.
Right.
Like, I'm very vocal to my family and saying, I'm thinking about suicide today. you know, I'm having these thoughts, right? You know, and you know, and you know, so I think like there needs to be that equal education able to, you know, to support, not just like look for signs, but just support.
I feel it's important to have it in general, this world to be a safe space.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
needs to be a safe place for people to be able to share when they're not okay.
Yeah.
And you also need to surround yourself with people who you can fall into as opposed to repel from. And that you can have that feeling of, I can contact this person and they're going to, one, believe me. Two, they're going to do what they can to support me. And three, they're going to follow up to make sure I get the help that I need. I feel like that's super duper important. And the understanding that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are more normal than I am. The fact that I don't need, and I've said this on here before, the fact that I don't need medication, I am the abnormal one. I'm the unicorn. Because like everybody at some point needs medication to get through this life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big proponent of it. I'm not a proponent of doctors just handing them out like candy, because that happens, I think, way too much. But, you know, if somebody can't, with therapy and living, and they just can't, then you need to go to the doctor. You need to talk to somebody, and you need to figure it out. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If anything, it is the healthiest, strongest thing that you can do, possibly for yourself and everyone who loves you. Because asking for help is strength. It is not weakness. And more people, I think, need to understand that.
And therapy should just be free, no matter what. Free. And there needs to be more therapists, because I know in Canada, you know, if you actually like go to your doctor, which obviously is free, and you ask for therapy, there's just like in Toronto, there was just a small handful of OHIP, which is our health coverage, paid psychologists. And I was just very lucky to get it. And it took 6 months to get it. So like, you know, imagine suffering 6 months, not having money to pay for private therapy, having to wait for your health, you know, and, you know, how many people are just not doing that, you know, and, you know, and the free services that you get, although I'm very grateful, you know, that they're there. And I'm very, very lucky. I got into a program where it's through a hospital that's like an outpatient program. So I work with a case counselor that I meet every week for free. And it's for people who have mental health, but they're functional. They're functional in society. They can hold down jobs. They can, you know, it's not all consuming. I was so lucky to get in this program. You know, there's walk-in one-on-ones, like, you know, like that I can find, but like that might be great for some, but I know for me, I don't want to talk to a stranger one time and go there every week and not know who I'm going to get week over week. So I'm incredibly grateful that exists, and it's probably a lifeline to a lot of people. It's not for me, you know, but then therapy in itself was completely unaffordable. So like, yeah, we need so much more, you know, support in this area for people.
You know, going in that medical realm, you know, people here like make fun of Canada because you're just like, it's not a perfect system, but you know, you have health insurance without having to really think about it, because you've got the national health thing. What people here, I don't think, realize is the amount of money that we pay to have insurance at all.
It doesn't do anything.
Well, it's not that. It's that we put money towards having insurance, that nut would go away and it would come out as taxes that would go towards a national health plan, making so that everybody can have access to health care. I feel pretty confident that the amount of money that I pay would probably be comparable to the amount of money I'd be paying if it went the other direction, and I'd have access to healthcare without having to worry about how I'm going to pay for it and the bills going up and them taking away, pieces of the Affordable Care Act that they're talking about doing and subsidies and like all these things that are going to impact 70 million plus people. So we're a dumb society. So, and we're intentionally a dumb society. And that's why we're in the position that we're in politically. But you have to understand, you're like, my taxes are going to go up, but you won't have to pay for healthcare. Or your employer won't have to pay for that healthcare. And guess what? Your employer has two choices. Your employer can pocket the money that he no longer has to pay, or she no longer has to pay, or she or he can give you raises with the money that they no longer have to pay towards healthcare. Maybe that's part of the deal from the government is you're paying $75,000 or like $150,000 a year for your 10 employees to have health insurance. Well, now split that up amongst those 10 employees because you no longer have to pay it. And now their paychecks will have a higher tax rate in order to cover the national coverage. People don't think forward. If they thought forward, they wouldn't object so much to things that would help the all instead of the few. It's really not a difficult concept when you live a life where you care about all instead of the few. But it is foreign to many.
Well, it kind of goes back to the labels. Like they're labeling it as a tax hike, not a finally getting to benefit from your money hike or like something. And so when a label is added, we box that into that labeled thing and we stop looking. Like we actually, I went to a Psychology of a Murderer show 2 weeks ago. And that's what she was kind of talking about, was just like the curiosity and the compassion and like, stop trying to label people so easily or stop trying to label things so easily and question them. Because when you question them, you can get to answers that benefit people. Like, and that's kind of like, Socrates, question everything. Like that's kind of how I live my life anyway. But that's like what we have stopped doing is questioning things, and we just put a label on it and we decide if that label is a good label or a bad label, and that's it. We're done.
It's not realistic.
No.
Things are not black and white in this world. They are shades of gray, like tons of shades, tons of them.
I mean, you can't get a 64 box of crowns if you don't have 64 shades of colors. Like that's so clearly there are loads of shades of everything.
That's a great analogy.
That's what we're losing that aspect, just like with mental health, just like with veganism, just like we're losing the individual in the compassion realm, but only thinking of the individual in the capitalistic realm.
And really, how much is it going to cost? I mean, right now on Medicare, I'm paying $200 for, I think, what is one of the more expensive Part B, Plan B add-ons. And it allows me to go to almost any gym in town. And I basically don't pay anything. I mean, a little copay here and there. But, if everybody had to pay that amount, that would create quite a kitty, just saying. And there's some of us who don't really go to the doctor very often. So that's all for the kitty.
Right.
Yeah. I had to get health insurance to cover my whole body when all I wanted to do was cover my mind. And so like, I've got all these other benefits for, physical. And I'm just like, can I not just get like an a la carte and just like,
or what do they call it now? Concierge service.
Yes.
But it's actually important to have insurance that covers your whole body because, the definition of an accident is something that is unplanned. And that comes with cancer, diabetes, strokes, heart disease, mental illness, everything in between. You're breaking your ankle. You really don't want breaking your ankle to bankrupt you.
Yeah.
And that's the whole definition of insurance. It's why you drive a car and you insure it.
Yeah.
Right? Is in case something happens. And with our bodies, you just, again, snap of a finger. It's like one day you have a headache, next thing you have a tumor. You just don't know. You just
One
don't
minute you're
know.
going to the store, and the next minute you're face down with a split open hand because you tripped and fell, and you have to get stitches. Oh yeah, I know.
Callie is trip prone. Just so you know. Yes. Yes. Callie is very really good at tripping on nothing, on the air.
Yes, I
And
am.
hurting herself. Yes.
Yes, I am. I actually found out though that could also be a part of my ADHD. So I'm chalking it up to that now, and not just that I'm clumsy and that it runs in the family.
That's fair, because your head's someplace else than where you are at that moment.
You never know what's going on. Balance is one of the things we lose as we age. And I was thinking, like, I'm a runner. I'm doing one leg at a time. My balance is going to be so great. But because I participate in the National Senior Games, that's like one thing they measure every time you go back. And I've been blown away by how much, I don't feel dizzy. I don't feel off balance, but I can't stand on one leg with my eyes closed like I used to. So there are these little things that measure how well we're doing that, but we may not be aware of it until you actually take a test and find out. Is it going to send me to the doctor to look at everything else related to that? No, but it's good information to know, even though you may not be aware of it.
Oh yeah, I've been feeling vertigo while playing pickleball. Like streaks. It's different from my vertigo from when I like come off a ship or a train. So it's a little freaky. I'm equating it, self-diagnosis, right? I'm equating it to not being hydrated enough. Because again, like I said, I'm having hot flashes and I'm dripping with sweat. Like I'm dripping with sweat more than like other people are. And this is indoors, outdoors, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. So I'm not drinking enough. And now I've added electrolytes to my water. And I think I'm finally seeing a difference. Because what would happen is you chase the ball as much as you play the game in pickleball. So what I was finding was I was getting the ball and you turn your body to come back. And in that turn, it was like streak. And that's how my mind felt. It felt like a streak. And I was like, this is not cool. Because I don't want anything to prevent me from playing. So I just kind of was like, all right, let me just play through this and figure out what in the world is going on, because I can't, play through this forever if this continues, because that's a problem.
Hydration is so important, especially as the planet heats up. My publisher had a couple of books on water that authors wrote, and I read those at the time, and I've read more since then. And it's just amazing how much we can be chronically dehydrated and not be aware of it until, and it's just it affects so many things. Like you can have a headache that completely goes away just by drinking a couple glasses of water. I've had chest pain throughout my life, my adult life, that often goes away if I just drink water. So it's really quite something. Strokes, another thing that can be affected by dehydration. So
drink water, drink electrolytes if you're really active and you're sweating as much and you're exercising. Electrolytes are probably even more important than just drinking water. And that's the difference. I mean, I have an electrolyte sponsor. What is it? LMNT? Yes, there are electrolyte sponsors. So I just went upstairs and I was like, let me find a flavor. So that's what I've been putting in my water now, which is great. So
and just speaking from a runner's perspective, just this past weekend when I raced, they had watermelon at a race, and oh my gosh, that was just like the most beautiful, tastiest thing. Same with strawberries post-race. Why? Because they have a lot of sugar and a lot of natural electrolytes, which is what the commercial products extract. So it is amazing what our body will tell us we need if we only listen.
Yes, listening is something humans don't do well.
Mm-hmm. Well, back to like you're talking about your menopause, your hot flashes, and as far as like mental health is concerned, we also think well, you were fine before, maybe. Like, oh, well, why is this a problem now? Well, because hormones are a problem now, especially for women. And perimenopause and menopause can exacerbate your anxiety, your depression, and your ADHD and cause you to be worse. So it's like, even if like I feel like I was a high functioner for most of my life, but I am now of a certain age that is 29 and holding for a few years that that perimenopause is starting to kick in. And so the things that I could mask before aren't as maskable now. And so it's, so like, yeah, maybe I was fine before, or maybe, whoever was fine before. But if they're saying that they have a problem now, then they have a problem now. And you're not the one that gets to decide that they don't.
Right. Women going through this whole menopause thing is, I mean, there are women, I mean, I'll take the hot flashes over the people who are absolutely out of their minds. Like who are on PMS nonstop. I'm good. If I had to be like in a PMS state for years, I don't even know. Life like that would be super hard. And for anyone who's around you. And it's not like stress doesn't make me already, pretty much an asshole. So Kelly knows.
No comment.
So, and I just have to, you try to not be in as stressful situations as possible. But life has been super stressful past few years.
Being an entrepreneur is super stressful. Being a nonprofit is super stressful.
Yeah,
life is super stressful.
Yep. I mean, even today we had a meeting today, and after the meeting, Kelly and I met, and I went, you know what? I'd really like to go crawl under a rock now. The meeting had the exact opposite effect on me as it did probably most of the people in the meeting. I went to a dark place, as opposed to this is super exciting, we're going to like do this incredible stuff place. And it might have been me not realizing the weight of this talk without knowing that this talk was going to be a bit heavier for me than I understood. And that's kind of where I went with, I just said that. I said, I think this might be weighing on me more than I thought it would. Because, it's not an easy talk. Even though we made it very easy. So thank you. Mm-hmm. This is much easier than the one, after the breakup. It's really terrible.
It's all okay. Whatever you do to get through the night and say to manage it. Because it is such a long healing process.
Yeah. And that's what everyone who has gone through this has said. Anyone who has had someone in their lives commit suicide has pretty much been like, it just doesn't go away that quickly. It just lingers for a time. And as Marla said, she has something lingering of someone she met for a brief amount of time in her 20s. That's over 30 years ago. That's a long time. I mean, because for me, it's like to make the choice to end your life is super extreme. Like, I love living and I'm afraid of dying. So to intentionally do it myself is just so not in my purview. It just isn't. And it never has been. I've never been suicidal. I've never thought that. There's just no. I no. But I do understand why it is in others. But it took me growing up to understand that. As opposed to being like, what's wrong with you? How could you not want to live? What do you mean you're depressed? Snap out of it. I didn't understand. But then, I went and got a counseling degree. So Jennifer said,
the opposite. I don't like living, and I'm absolutely terrified of dying. So it's just constant torture. I wake up and go, fuck, I'm awake, I'm alive. I didn't die through the night. Shit.
Sometimes that's the only thing that keeps you alive, though, right? Is just like the fear of dying is like,
Yeah. I
I'm
would
too
not,
afraid to die that
Yeah.
I continue to live.
yeah, and you know, and I know what Marla was saying when she didn't think that wasn't trying to say suicide's nothing. Like
Right.
for me, I understand what you're saying, Helene. Like it's a very serious thing to take your life. But if someone is just like, you know what, I'm done with this planet. I just don't want to be here anymore. And you know, like the person I know who died by suicide, they did suffer from mental health. But the way that they took their life was so meticulous. They put so much thought into who it was going to affect, from their mother to the people who were going to find them. And it was such a clean suicide, you know, that although I do know that they suffered, like, and they did write a note. And in the note, they realized their brain didn't function right, and they just realized they, you know, like nothing was going to help. It was very like, despite the fact that they had depression and you know, like it was very clear and very, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't, you know, oh, well, like it was just like, there's something wrong with me and I'm choosing to end my life, right? There was like a lot of clarity in it. And I understand that, you know, I do understand that, you know. I think if I didn't have my children, like I would, you know what I mean? Like I can see myself getting a lot worse for those information. And for the absolute terrifying thought of the process of dying, the act of dying, right? Which
it's very hard to kill a human body.
Yeah.
I don't know if people realize that. It is very difficult to kill a human body. The brain and the body it fights to live, and to intentionally kill it when there's nothing wrong, like physically wrong. I mean, mentally it's one thing, but nothing physically wrong with your body. It is very difficult to do that. So you have to do something. And then people think like they're going to take pills and they're going to put themselves in like a white dress. They're going to lay in bed and they're going to go to sleep. No, you're going to be convulsing and throwing up and shitting yourself. And like, you're going to be disgusting and it's going to hurt. Like it's really going to hurt. So let's seriously, if you're thinking suicide and you're thinking that's something that you want to do, you need to call a suicide hotline. You need to contact somebody immediately and not wait. And also understand that the realities of actually doing the deed is not like in the movies.
Yeah.
It's not. I did a suicide hotline when I was in college. So I spoke to people who are calling in saying that they want to take their lives. And of course, I've had friends who have said they want to commit suicide, and I jumped into action. Let's go get you help. Let's go to the hospital. Like, we're not just going to go home and go to bed and like wake up and see like how you doing next day. Like if you want someone to jump in and make sure you're okay, you tell me that you're thinking about taking your own life. And I will. I've lost friends because I've called people, like their parents, to say, this is what's going on. And the friend ends up hating me because they're mad that I got their parents involved. But that means I did the right thing.
But see, on the other side of that, we also need those people who are listening to be compassionate and be a listener and not be a fixer and not, you know, oh, well, you'll get over it. Oh, it's just a bad time, but dismissive. Because I feel like that sometimes that's also why we don't speak out. It's because people don't, well, obviously everybody has their own problems. So you've got that on top of it. But it's also like, you know, they're just going to think I'm seeking attention. They're just going to think that I'm just having a rough patch and I'll get over it. Or they're just going to, you know, whatever, kind of victim blaming a person who has this disease, especially if they're undiagnosed. So like, I think we need more people to be able to speak out, but we need to be more of a safe space for those people to feel like they can speak out.
Correct. Exactly.
And I think the worst thing is, it's not even like Helene, you were saying, and Kelly, you're saying like some of the things, you know, like, you know, oh, you're going to get over it, or, you know, whatever. I haven't been supportive because when I have been vocal about it, I got the response of, well, you're not thinking about the good times in your life. You're not thinking about the joy. You've had joy in your life. And I don't think there's anyone that I know who suffers from depression that doesn't know that there has been joy. That it has nothing to do with having suicidal ideology, like ideations in your head, right? It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like,
I think that's one of the things that you say to somebody to get them to focus on something more positive than focusing on, if you're like kill, I want to kill. The person's like, so let's think about something that, that you love, or that something that matters to you, something that brought you joy, as opposed to you. It's very different from trying to get your mind to go and focus on something like that than telling you that you've had joy. I can tell you you've had good in your life, but if I want you to bring that vision and memory to the forefront of your brain so that you can think about that and maybe start to replace some of those negative thoughts into positive ones before you can actually get the help that you need, that's super important. The other strategy is to be like, you have kids, it's the guilt factor of the people you'll leave behind. And, in saying to Heather, she has a litany of like a micro sanctuary of animals. You need to take care of them because there's not anybody else to take care of them.
Yeah.
So because of one, she doesn't want to live, but she's not going to take her life. She just wants this one to be over so they can eternally be together, which is very interesting to me because he didn't believe in God. So that tells me he didn't believe in another life. But
she does, and that makes her feel better.
Yes.
Well, see, and that's you're right, Kelly. Like, oh, you've had good times, and obviously, I'm thinking, kind of one of the things that made me think my brain was broken is like, I have an amazing husband. I have amazing friends who are obviously in this chat showing support. I have amazing clients. I have 5 cats and over 200 lives I've saved as part of animal rescue, and like, obviously, I know I have great things in my life, but that doesn't dig me out of the spiral that I'm in. It doesn't dig me out of the anxiety or fear of what I'm dealing with. So it's like, but coming at it from like, kind of like anxiety, I guess, kind of like the grounding, find 5 things that will do this, or, like being more of a, let's think of 5 things that have made you happy today, or let's think of 5 things that we've been grateful for, something that turns it more into a, you're not a problem, or, you shouldn't have this problem sort of thing, and make it more of a way to connect. Like Jennifer was saying, crisis management of like giving them reasons to live, reasons to connect to what they have.
Exactly. And then we're on Instagram as well, and the Instagram comments don't come through, but I just went over there to find a comment that said, from Daenerys, my brother did it 4 months ago through euthanasia. The doctors told us his heart was super strong and took a couple more minutes than what it normally takes, quote unquote. Seeing him dead was the most traumatic thing. That's
that would be very traumatic.
It's very traumatic. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've looked at the pictures of his body from the articles in Sicily over and over and over. So, I think that's my way of confirming that it's real. Because other than that, there is no reality there, because he did this in Italy. He did this in another country. He did this, he did this alone, and he really did it, with we don't know if there's a note. I don't think there's a note, actually. The reason why I don't think there's a note, because there was a conversation about maybe something's in the mail. But he tried in the fall and there was nothing in the mail, because that would have come. So, you learn from your previous attempts. You do something different. So, and mail from Italy takes some time. But at this point, it'll be 3 weeks. I haven't heard that anything was mailed or there was any note left behind. Just messages that were sent to Heather literally up to the second that he did it. So, and none of it was like, I'm going to jump off the cliff now. So, I mean, it does take months for mail to arrive from Italy. Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, and I, me being the curious person that I am, I was like, how do they get the ashes here? Because and me also being my personality, I tend to lean and make things more funny than I do making them more serious, and they're going to UPS them, which I think is awesome. And the consulate in Italy is going to track that package because I was like, I said to his brother, I said, how do they ensure that? It's invaluable.
So I was actually standing behind somebody at the post office once, and they had like a special box that says human remains or something like that. I'm going like, in that little box? And then, it kind of, so they do, I guess, and I asked when it was my turn, I said, do you see this a lot? And they said, yeah, fair amount. I mean, it's a lot cheaper than a funeral and everything else that you do traditionally.
Right. And Jennifer is saying how it could take months for mail to arrive from Italy. I posted a card last summer and it took 4 months from Venice. I do not understand how it can possibly take so long. Well, let's just talk about Italy for a second. 1 minute in Italy, in case you don't understand, is 15 hours. And I know that sounds strange, and it's not literally 15 minutes of hours for 1 minute, but that's how Italy functions. The trains don't run on time. Everything is super slow, and that's how they like it. So there is no rush. They do not work on weekends. It's just the way their culture is, even with a dead body.
Well, I mean, they're not going anywhere, so there's no need to take it fast.
It's true. It's not like there's a family on the other side of the world who's like waiting to, celebrate somebody's life. I mean, it's just, I mean, it wasn't my favorite country to visit when I traveled, and just ask for a soda and see how long it takes. Yeah, I was like, these trains are so slow, and I got yelled at in Milan, and I was like, I was pooping and peeing in holes in the ground, and I was like, you know what? This is really backwards. I'm good. I don't need to come to Italy. It's very pretty though. I appreciated it more when I left. So it's an absolutely beautiful country, and I'd probably appreciate it more now if I went, but I would definitely, I mean, I went to a restaurant and the bathroom was the hole in the ground, and I'm like, this is a restaurant. If you're going to have the hole in the ground, make it like in a public park, which happened in Switzerland. So we're women. We have to take our clothes off to go to the bathroom if we're in pants. I guess maybe women in Italy know not to wear pants when they go to certain restaurants.
There you go.
It's all good. All right. So this is just about 2 hours, and I feel like this was a fantastic conversation. And is there anything anybody wants to say to help close this out?
Just keep doing what you're doing. Be good to yourself, and this too will pass.
I mean, that's for all of us, right? There's, this is my trauma today, and somebody else could have a trauma tomorrow, because that's just, at this point, I'm just like, this is just the way life can be. Especially as you age. I mean, I don't have parents that will be dying. I feel fortunate that I don't have a 30, 40, 50 year, 60-year relationship with another human being that's a parent.
My mom's my best friend.
Right. I don't understand that. I guess the thing you can equate it to is to have a relationship that lasts in the 30s, 40s, 50 years. You've been with somebody, then they're ripped away. final way. That is devastating. But me and my oldest brother both actually feel grateful that we don't have that, because I think both of us understand the pain that comes along with it. But everybody, because we're all at that age where people's parents are dying, relatives are dying, and significant others and stuff are dying. So, and that's where we're here to support everybody through what they're going through, if you have that ability. And if you don't, that's okay too. Because not everybody is put here to help others to get through their shit. But those of us who have that ability should.
I have a couple things to say. And one is obviously show yourself compassion and grace. And if someone's coming to you, or someone is getting on your last nerve because they're not doing what you think they should be doing, also give them compassion and grace, because our lived experiences are not the same. But we also need to, I just lost my train of thought, compassion and grace, but also speak out, be open for those who are going to speak out. And I think talk about it, obviously, like we are here, and don't let society determine your path forward. Like even like Kelly, on your meds, you said that they weren't working right. That doesn't mean all of them won't. So you wanted, you'd mentioned tried more. Marla, the trauma of transferring from one med to another. But like that is just like with everything else in life, even though the current administration tries separately, like that is your decision to make, and that is your path forward. And if you feel that that path needs to involve medication, if that path needs to involve talking, then make those things happen, because the world is better with you in it.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. All right. Well, that was a great way to close out this show, which I think Callie should become a permanent part of the Stew Crew. You all can. Yep. Speaking of positive, if you would like, then we might go on more often. Or not. Who knows? If we go on more often, we don't tend to talk for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the topic. So, but we tend to go on for like an hour when we go on more often, and then forever when we don't. So, all right. So I'm going to close out this show. And Jennifer's, you're amazing. Thank you for being part of it. And I know you're here for Callie, but we really appreciate you too. So let me see. Well, thank you, Callie. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Ellen. And of course, thank you. Thank you especially for those who stuck with us for the whole almost 2 hours of our show. We really appreciate you. And, be kind, be good to yourself, be good to others, and follow our social media, as a cute little plug. And we will see you next time. Until then, be nice to you and to others.